think I realized that wherever, you know what I mean, whatever you want to do, like you definitely have influence and you 100% can develop an audience. And I wouldn't say that you need to have good work. I wouldn't say any of that really matters, but I think it's gonna be dependent on how you want to be perceived. I think a lot of times we have a way of like typecasting people. Like I know for me, starting with writing and being a writer, I was really like, trying to take my time in terms of like branding and things like that. I mean, this was the first year where I really started taking myself seriously. I think that that kind of just happens when you become an adult and like you get a little bit older. But I was always so aware, like, of, you know, how I was going to be branded, how I was going to be perceived, what type of work I was going to be putting out there. You know what I mean? Like I was always aware of that because one, cancel culture, but also just because I just felt like, you want to create good stuff. Like I think ideals about like being consistent and things like that. I mean, it all depends. I feel like when I first started this podcast, like when it was Earthen's Den, if you guys go way, way back, like I think at this point we're almost at like 400 episodes. I may be at like 300. It's a lot of podcast episodes. You know what I mean? I started this in 2020, so that was 4 years ago. And obviously I rebranded like a few times. But now it's Renaissance Room. And so it's like when I think about the conversations that I want to have and the things like that's been a huge shift. And I felt like it was very timely with Renaissance Room, especially as I just kind of grew and developed. So I think it's pretty cool that people are still listening to this pod as I grow and develop. Like, I think that that really means a lot and that says a lot when people can kind of transition with you. And I think for anybody who's in that space and you find yourself, maybe you do have a brand or you're trying to figure out what that brand is, I would say just kind of like flow with it and like take your time. But yeah, back to what I was saying about consistency. I don't know. I think if you have the energy, I think if you have the time, I think if you're, high vibe and like, like you're really in tune and tapped in like that, like go for it. But I think as far as, if you don't have the time and you're not really tapped in and, just being consistent, putting out a bunch of trash, like it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? I just don't believe in that. Like I was at a place in my life where I was like, okay, when I first started writing, I was like, I'm going to write every day. And I did. And I met my goals and I actually exceeded my goals with Medium for my column. And I was very proud of that. And I definitely think it's something that you want to do repetitiously. But I do think depending on the line of work, depending on the intentionality, like you really want to be mindful of that. Like I think it's so easy to get caught up in that. Like I said, I think if you have an idea, if you got the time, personally, as someone who is a writer, as who is a thinker, I believe in conceptualizing. Like I believe in taking the time to just kind of sit and think about, what is going on. You know what I mean? Think about what you're thinking about. You know what I mean? Like I believe in that. Like I don't think that it should be a matter of just putting out a bunch of stuff or ever just like, you know what I mean? Because I think you need time to kind of sit and reflect. Like, when I start to feel like, oh, I need to just make a podcast or I need to just write a column and it's trash, you know what I mean? Just for the sake of writing it. That's not what I'm about. I think for some, it's like, okay, be consistent, stick with it. I think it depends. Like, I think once you kind of develop a habit, like when I first started writing, like I was writing every day and I still write every day, right? Like, even if I'm not publishing something. And I think that's another thing that you can also kind of take into consideration too. Like, sometimes we feel like whenever we're not posting content, where we're not creating something, where we're not sharing something with the world, that it's not real, like it's not being done. When I worked with the community center for the second year of my nonprofit, that was like very much real. You know what I mean? Like I was still very much consistent in my overall chief aim and mission with my nonprofit. But there were no pictures, so I think a lot of people may say, oh man, you weren't consistent with that year or you weren't consistent with your nonprofit, but it was like, absolutely not. I stayed the course. And so it's just like, I don't know. I think you kind of have to always keep in mind as well, like you are a real person. Like technology is a great tool, right? It's a great way to connect and meet people and get your work out there. And it feels really good to, garner a following and have, a platform and, to be someone who's somewhat like influential. But at the end of the day, like you're still a real person. You know what I mean? So it's like what goes on in your reality, your day-to-day life in the real world is just as much real, you know what I mean, as anything that you're posting online. So it's like, I think for me, I'm about work that's that I can feel good about. You know what I mean? I'm definitely someone who definitely wants to stay within my own personal like integrity. So it's like I'm not really in a rush to grow too fast, and I'm really grateful, you know, because it's like I think there's really something about taking your time to really build something. I think there's something about, you know, the real world work that needs to be done, right? Like I think a lot of times people are like work smarter, not harder. Like that became the huge phenomenon. Like that became the huge mantra for the internet and like technology. And like I'm here for it. Like I get it 100%. But I believe in the gritty work. Like you know what I mean? Like I believe in doing hard work, and I think that's just always gonna be me. Like you know, I don't care what people say. Like you know, you can get online, you can make X amount of money if you just post videos every day. Well, you know what I mean? Like, I get that. I really do. And it's not to say that, creating content is not something that, requires any cognitive exertion. Like, I definitely think you have to put in ample amount of energy to create content. And, like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's not something that's just entirely wasteful. But I'm definitely someone who really believes in hard work. Like, I like being out in the world, moving my body, doing things. You know what I mean? So for me, if that means it's going to take me a little bit longer, I'm okay with that. Like I'm 100% okay with that. And like I said, this is just to kind of encourage anybody out there. Like if you've started multiple platforms, or if you've got a business or whatever it is you're doing, you have to really sit and reflect from your own personal perspective. Like like I said, for me, it was very evident that I have influence, right? Like the platforms that I've created. I mean, even when I was on SoundCloud, you know what I mean? Like even when I was on freaking SoundCloud, like 2019, 2018, 2017, like, you know what I mean? Like SoundCloud, thugging it out with the pod, you know what I mean? In my garage band bag, you know what I mean? Like I have like, you know what I mean? So it's just like, there's no need to rush this, and I think as I started looking at social media from more of a personal branding standpoint, I started taking it a little bit more seriously. Like that's where I was at today. And like, that's not to say, I'm hyper aware of like the criticism. Like I made a YouTube video talking about black inferiority. And, there was someone who was just like very lengthy explanation and kind of like rebuttaling or critiquing or whatever. And though I've always kind of wanted mentors and things like that, I don't know. I think from a consumer standpoint, if you don't agree with something, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, because I don't want to say this and be like, oh, because people a lot of time will take this out of context and they'll be like, oh, this person is, you know, uh, has like a strong defense against criticism, and it's not really that. Like that's not really my MO, but I just think that a lot of times people misunderstand me, and it's like they don't know me. And so I think for me, I would just appreciate like if anybody who enjoys my work, just enjoy the work. You know what I mean? Like enjoy this art form, enjoy the medium, enjoy the vessel. Like, you know what I mean? That doesn't mean don't critique it. Like sure, you can critique it, I guess, but it's just like, why not just enjoy, you know what I mean? Whatever it is you're consuming. And like, if you don't like it, then just like move on. Like, I don't think that everything is so deep. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I think if you're a critical, I think if you're, a critic, I think if you're someone who, you know what I mean? Like that's literally what you do for work, then yeah, then I think even at that point, it's kind of cool because it's like you have this ability to critique in a way that it's not offensive and just downright, like you're missing a lot of pieces. I think a lot of times that's what I'm saying, like about being misunderstood. It's really hard to take the criticism seriously because it's like you don't even know me. You know what I mean? And it's like I don't know how people go to great extents. I think like you can like of course, critique the work, but I think at the end of the day, when you look at it from a consumer perspective, most people actually enjoy the work and they actually very much admire the vessel and the medium in which it's being channeled. Like people like what you do, So it's like the criticism is never really coming from a academic or analytical space to say, you know what, I want to critique this to make it better. It's like I'm coming from a space of like I really love this and I low-key hate that it's you. You know what I mean? So it's like I don't know, I just feel like it's like art gallery and like art and just everything, like just enjoy the work. Like just enjoy the work. I think most people if you've ever done anything, I mean, that's not to say like anybody, but I know for me, I'm already good with the self-awareness. Like I don't need you. You know what I mean? I don't need that. And like I know people are going to do what they want to do, but like I don't know. I just feel like as I'm building a personal brand, as I'm putting myself out there and I'm like navigating these waters, it's just something I just notice about people. Like, nobody critiques Target. And like obviously this is not to compare me to Target, but it's like when you think about the things that we consume on a daily basis, like you don't sit and complain about your microwave. Like just use the microwave. You know what I mean? Enjoy the microwave. Right? Nobody goes to the art gallery or like, you know what I mean? Like yes, like I said, I think it's a difference between like interacting with people who genuinely love your work and they can come from a space of like respect and it's a very sound space and it's like okay, I can hear this, like I can listen to this, like I'm completely here for what people are saying in this in regards to this. But I just think for a lot of people it's really hard to kind of find those people who actually rock with your work and who can really give you sound critique, and like you can really take that, it's like that those people unfortunately it gets lost on them because it's like you just have so many people who just literally are critiquing it, but they really enjoy it and they just can't just say that they enjoy it, like, and I don't understand it, so I don't know. I think that's another thing too with the internet. It's tricky. And I think for me being someone who's very much like real world, like I'm big on that because like I said, I would say that a lot of people wouldn't do half the things they would do if it wasn't online. They wouldn't even say that to you. They would never say that to you. And then it's just like I think it's just something about, for me personally, knowing people and like vetting people, like that to me just will always hold way more weight than like a stranger online. Like, and even if this person does admire my work and they may be coming from a place with like righteous intentions or whatever, it's just like, you don't know me though, so it's like there's a huge gap missing here versus like someone who, let's take, for example, like a college professor, someone who has seen your work, you know what I mean, who has built some level of like credibility to be able to critique your work, and that's why I say too, like, I have a whole accumulation of like content of like all the things I've done. So it's like to meet people who are kind of like coming into my space, now. And even though like, let me say this first and then I'll say that. But people who are coming into my space now and it's like they're critiquing certain things, it's like, but that's not even, you know what I mean, it's not accurate because it's like there's a whole slew of work and content and like even in my real life, like I am not just this internet personality. Like I very much be doing real work like in the community. So it's just like there's so much range, so much context that's really missing. And I think even to really assess someone's work honestly takes historical, you have to take a lot into account, right? Like when you look at Van Gogh, when you look at, what I mean, you take a accumulation of this person's work over the years, right? Warhol, Basquiat, like you look at all of that, you know what I mean? Like you don't just take one podcast or one, you just like, you know what I mean? That's what people do today. And it's just like, to me, it's really hard to listen to those voices because it's not, to me, that's not a loyal fan base. And I value loyalty, right? Like if you're going to critique something, look at from here and there, that's why I was like really so big on like people coming in at Kanye West because I'm like, man, Kanye West has done so many, you know what I mean? How are we going to take this one moment, you know what I mean? And yes, people change, but it's like, how can we take this one, And I think even to even piggyback like with Kanye West, it's like Kanye West, when you look at his story, like the whole timeline of it, like Kanye West was really at this like dichotomous state of mind where it's like things are happening to you in your life. You don't have family. And you have this faith background, right? And there are a lot of conspiracies sometimes that are bred in that, especially as it pertains to Black people and like the Black community. And I think I talked about this like on this podcast about like conspiracy theories. It wasn't titled that. It was a pod that I did. It wasn't titled conspiracy theories, but I addressed how sometimes leading into those conspiracy theories can kind of lead us into a state of paranoia. And so it's like when you look at Kanye West, first of all, you have to understand what Kanye West has done is something that is so transformative. Like not only has he superseded white supremacy, he has literally revolutionized fashion, and it's never going back the same. Like Kanye West has absolutely, and it's not just fashion, right? He has revolutionized the interdisciplinary between fashion, interior design, like everything across the board, entertainment, you know what I mean? Hip hop, like Kanye West is literally like a legend living in our modern day time. So it's like you can only imagine the level of isolation that he may feel. And like to be someone who is so revolutionary and to be like alive in your day, like that is heavy, right? Like that level of giftedness, especially as it pertains to a black man, right? Like we know black people already don't get we already don't get the ability to be gifted, right? We don't get the ability to be intelligent, right? We're not getting that title, but we're definitely not getting the title of being gifted, right? That is only stored up for the geniuses such as Einstein. But Kanye West being a genius, literally, you know what I mean? Literally being someone who is a creative genius, it's like you can only imagine what he's going through. And then, like I said too, like he's superseded a lot of the systems that have been put in place to really keep him down. So it's just like, I think that when we look at Kanye West and people critique Kanye West, people don't understand Kanye West because they haven't been a loyal fan base, right? And I think that's so annoying to me sometimes. And I guess just to kind of put it simply, simply put, like, and maybe just kind of insert my own personal, feelings there. It's like people are so quick to critique things, and it's like they don't even understand it, and they don't want to understand it, because I think to understand something will really require you to kind of sit back, take a back seat to your ego and be honest and have like a level of self-awareness within yourself that maybe I can't understand this person in this level of work because I don't have the depth. I don't have the experience. I don't have, I don't have the ability to cognitively reason and understand in certain ways, right? Like whatever it is that this person is talking about, like maybe just simply put, I don't have the range. You know what I mean? Like when I think about Toni Morrison, for example, I'm still trying to dissect Toni Morrison's work, right? Like Toni Morrison is brilliant. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, and I think even for me, just like reading The Source of Self-Regard and just looking at her personal essays, I'm trying to digest this. But when I first came into like Toni Morrison's work, I'm like, yo, what is she saying? But I knew that was not a reflection of Toni Morrison. That was a reflection of me. Like I wasn't at a point in my literary journey where I could really understand and break down the complexities of Toni Morrison's work and her in the fullness of it, right? Like, so I think that's what a lot of people do today, and that's just kind of like my little rant. It's over now. I went on a tangent about like criticism, but yeah, building a personal brand, just take your time. Like honestly, I would say just take your time. I think a lot of people kind of want to put out that content, and I don't know. I just think when you get so heavy in that like that, sometimes it just gets kind of weak and it kind of weans out. And like I said, if you can vibrate high and you can like what I mean, get it done, like then definitely get it done. But it's like when you got real life stuff going on in the world and you are moving, in that space, like physicalities and so forth, it's a little bit more challenging, I think, to kind of have this attitude of like everything's going to get done and I'm going to, you know what I mean? And actually put out quality work. So I think it's all about you at the end of the day. It's about what you're trying to build, what you want to do. And really just kind of knowing yourself. And I think for me, I'm totally in alignment with my values.